Hey there, everybody. CCP Dolan here again with CCP Fozzie. We have a great match coming up for you. Oxygen Isonopes versus Africa's Finest.
And we do have Widows.
Oh.
Lots and lots of Widows. We have both teams bringing ECM setups this time. So that is going to be really interesting to see. The fact that Rooks were banned out, and yet we still have really heavy ECM.
By Africa's Finest, yes.
Both of them have brought double Widow teams. This is pretty amazing.
This is a match we have never seen before. I'm safely saying
Widow
that.
versus full Widow versus full Widow.
Widow versus
you
Widow.
Haven't seen that. Widows were made popular by the Pandemic Legion team in the last Alliance tournament. Then they lost to Vargers with them.
So here's the crucial difference, and we're going to see this difference as soon as it starts. Those Griffins, if those Griffins get early locks, it's going to be so dangerous.
So we have. All right, so the match has now begun. You can see the EW bars for both of them are very large, but it is larger for Oxygen Isonopes. They do have
there
more
we
EW.
go.
And they had the fast lockers, so those Griffins got in locks fast, and you can see, this is where you can see what happens EW versus EW with these bars. They both have large control bars. You can see the bar for Africa's Finest is not filled up, because they're not applying any of their jams, or very little of them, because they can't lock. The team that gets the jamming in first is the team that has a huge advantage. Although it's starting to flip a little bit, we got some locks in from Africa's Finest.
So, but the thing is, as long as you have more than 50% of that control bar, you're going to tend to stabilize towards your victory. As jams drop in and out, it's pretty much random, or it's a dice roll against sensor strength of the other ship and your own sensor strength, and so you're going to always sort of tend towards back. Towards an even keel.
Now, so definitely the E-War battle is being won by Oxygen Isonopes. However, the DPS for Africa's Finest is a lot higher. We can see the bar is almost twice as long. A lot of it's coming from the fact that they've got a Cyclone.
Yes.
While you've got Blackbirds, which do very little damage but have a lot more jamming for the Isonopes. So if I was the Africa's Finest team, I would be going after those Blackbirds. They don't have a big tank, they don't have good resist.
You can see the difference here of just going all the way. If you're going to go for one of these control teams, you have to go all the way, because if you miss a single ship and it gets away from you, it all falls apart because you don't have that much health. Sometimes,
but then you also really need to bring damage. Damage is a key part of these ECM teams, because the longer the match goes, the chances are your jams are just going to get missed. You're going to lose jams against someone important, as you see that Griffin about to explode, and even though they had the bigger control, Oxygen Isonopes losing the first ship. And we've talked about it before, losing a ship for an ECM team. Bad news.
Yeah. Well, then again, the Griffin's jam strength not as strong as those Blackbirds. They're still ahead in overall ECM.
But what that means is that we're seeing actual damage being applied by Africa's Finest, while we're not seeing it applied by the Isonopes.
That's very true. And 2 points is enough points to win.
Yes, if this match were to just go to time, that would be it. But now you can see locks and stuff being applied. We got painters applied to another Griffin for the Isonopes.
But reps are already landing on that Griffin. That that Basilisk knows the next target of choice is the Griffin. He's the one to be taken down, slowly chipping away at the ECM lead. Whoa! We just had significant jams dropped. No one's even jamming. There we go. Jams reapplied to the Widow. There was about to be a massive piloting error that would almost certainly lose a match, but they recovered fast enough.
So the Isonopes are still dominating this control match, but they're not doing any damage. One of the problems with the Widow with Torps is a high DPS ship, but it doesn't apply to frigates. So they can't do significant damage to that Hawk. And that's the part where they're really failing. They don't have ships here that are going to do great damage. And as we see that Kitsune dropping, if that Kitsune goes, that's going to be another big loss from the Isonopes.
Yeah, that is a huge problem.
Once they start losing enough jamming ships, they're going to get more jams for Africa's Finest. And you already see their control bar rising. They're able to get locks. But the Kitsune did get reps. We'll see. He's in low armor, though, so next time he takes damage, he may not last too long.
Oh, look at the switch there. We just see a ton of damage supplied to the opposing team. Important thing to note, the 90 JP Howl from Africa's Finest is not running ECCM on his Basilisk.
That is fascinating. So that's a big mistake in this. They may have been counting on their own ECM to jam the other team, but since they lost that early ECM war, he is, however, repping.
Yeah, I don't know how that's happening.
He may just be running a bunch of low slot.
Yes. Those we would not be able to see the effect of the ECCM running.
ECCM generally more effective though, because you can overheat it.
And as we see that another Griffin goes down.
And the Kitsune. So that is going to be a huge loss. We can see the jam bar dropping and moving up and down a lot for the Isonopes. If they can't kill something soon, then I think they're going to lose this. Like, they need to get something down fast.
They need to kill the Cyclone or something that's just worth points.
Or even if they can kill some frigates. Yeah, they need to get... What they need to do is destroy some of the opposing ships.
So the Widow is not going to be able to hit those frigates.
No.
So, and the Blackbirds won't do any damage. The Basilisk not going to do any damage. They need to pick something that they can hit. Shooting frigates is good when you can actually hit frigates.
It is, yes. But if they can take down those frigates, then at least it removes ships that they need to jam. It frees up some of their jammers. And you see some damage being done, but not enough, as that Merlin looks like he's holding in low shields.
Yeah. I just think, let's check out the positioning of the two Widows. At least we will on our screen. It becomes a battle of, can you get on top of those Widows to do the damage? Because that's the ship that your Widows are going to do a lot of damage against. The big SIG of your Torps is just going to tear them apart.
They're very far apart. And Africa's Finest, considering that they have dams. So the Oxygen Isonopes team is all ECM, as we see a Blackbird going down fast. Oh, yeah. Ooh. He's been caught by the frigs. As you can see, so these Harpies do a lot of damage. Harpies are assault frigs, Hawks as well, that do a lot of damage for their size and move fast and are actually very tough. So they're basically hunter-killers in this case. They can chase after these Blackbirds, they can chase after the Basilisks and catch them and take them down.
Yeah. So you can see here, they just didn't have enough anti-frig.
No, they didn't. And that is a huge weakness of these Widow teams. Actually, the last time Widow teams were used heavily in the Alliance tournament by Pandemic Legion, they lost partially because they couldn't kill frigates. They were remote sensor boosting, remote ECCMing the opposing ships. The opposing Vargers. The fact that Hun actually kind of bait ECM tanked their Vargers, as we see another Blackbird go down. So even though there's still a lot of jamming on the field for Isonopes, they really don't have a chance at this point.
So my thoughts here is that the Rook ban from Africa's Finest really messed up the Oxygen Isonopes team. I think they probably had a different team in mind with maybe Rooks in place of the Blackbirds, and then removing the Kitsune and just going with 3 Griffins.
The Rooks cost twice as many points as the Blackbirds, though, so that would have been hard to sub out.
But the Rooks actually do damage.
Yes, they do.
that's a big difference.
So it's possible that they had an ECM team that uses Rooks and couldn't use it and had to come up with something on the fly.
Maybe taking one Widow, or I really just like, I think if you're going to take an ACM team, I like the Rook the most.
Yes, the Rook being able to do damage, and do damage to small ships too with heavy missiles. So as you can see now, even though the control bars are quite large for both sides, the Africa's Finest one is full, or a lot more full, because they're able to get the lock. So they're at this point winning that ECM war. We're seeing damage being applied from one Widow to the other, and this is really just a matter of time before Africa's Finest takes
For those who aren't really familiar with these ships, these Widows are fitting torpedoes, which are very high damage, relatively close range, not as tight as some other blasters and things like that, but they also have a terrible time hitting small ships unless they are target painted.
Yes, and even then they have to be multiply target painted and webbed, and it's very difficult. They are going to get a little bit better at hitting frigates as of December 4th in Retribution.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I also like the Rook, is they have heavy missiles, which are so good that you're actually nerfing them into the ground.
A little bit. Not
just a little bit. Just a little bit.
It is
Tell that to my Drake.
A measured and appropriate response.
Well, I'm not the game designer here, you are, so well, you're improving the game every day.
So we're seeing a lot of newts being applied from these Widows. They're taking advantage of their high slots that they've got free to be able to use these newts on that Basilisk. That Basilisk is losing its cap and going down fast. The Basilisk for Oxygen Isonopes about to drop, and there it goes.
This is another match, as we talked about earlier, where low skill point players in small T1 frigates have won a match. They've completely swamped the other team. They weren't able to kill those Merlins, weren't able to kill those Hawks and Harpies.
Yep, and those ships were then able to catch the
Griffins and Blackbirds and Kitsunes and just tear them apart.
And get webs and painters. They've got target painters, like we talked about, which are helping the Torps from the Widows apply damage to the ships like the Blackbirds and like the Basilisk that just died.
One of the problems with those Widow teams is if you go full ECM, you're using up all your mid slots. You have no room for the target painters. They're really very important for those Widows to do their full DPS.
You can delegate those to the Frigs, but the Frigs have to know what they're doing. You have to keep them alive.
But if your Frigs are Griffins and Kitsunes,
then not so much.
You don't want to be putting target painters on.
So what we've seen here is 2 ECM teams with Oxygen Isonopes going whole hog in with full ECM, not cared about anything else, but that really crippled them here. They needed to be able to kill frigates, and they could kill battleships. If they went up against a battleship team with this, they jam everything and take them down using the Torps.
Yes.
But going up against a team that has a strong core of frigates, those Merlins, Hawks, Harpies, there's nothing they could do. They couldn't kill them. You saw them trying to kill them the whole match, applying damage and it easily getting wrecked. Very, very strong setup for Africa's Finest, a very strong performance, because they brought a more all-around balance team.
Yep. Making me eat crow. Take my words back.
You're still above 50. You're still better than me.
No, I'm not above 50. I've only guessed 2 correctly. Out of 5 matches.
Have we just like all guessed some? Oh yeah, I guess. Yeah.
I guess we're just bad. We're gonna throw it back to ourselves in the studio. We'll see you right
talk
again
about how
soon.
bad we are.
Yeah, we're terrible. We'll see you after a short promo.
Interesting match. So I got that one right, but when I saw the ships on the field, I thought that Isonopes would win. When I saw the Griffins, when I saw that they were going to get the first round of locks, I thought, all right, they might take it.
I definitely did as well.
Yeah.
And they clearly won the EW war. And at that point, if they had even 1 or 2 ships that could do damage, because their guys were completely unjammed.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons I like to see ECM teams that have 1 or 2 ships like a Sleipnir, a good all-around ship that does a lot of damage. Because then you just jam them and tell the Sleipnir, go do your thing, kill all of them, we'll just sit back here and jam.
Yeah.
And they do the job.
That's awesome.
But when you don't have the ability to kill frigates, then everything kind of falls apart. So they had control. They dominated this fight for the full, first 2 minutes of the fight, but they actually couldn't use that time to their advantage. They couldn't do anything with that time.
So it is worth noting that ECM, of all the control abilities that we're classifying as control, is the most sporadic.
Yes.
It's the most easily pushed over the edge, shot in the back of the head, like just something slips up and it all goes wrong. It works great, but the dice rolls sometimes just don't work.
You can see it with damp teams as well, where they have to control range, and if that falls apart, they fall apart. But ECM relies on these dice rolls.
ECM is literally a dice roll. Literally just going, I hope I get these jams. I hope I have the right sensor strength and the right bonuses to get these jams over and over again. And please, I hope nothing kills me. So a lot of times, it just doesn't work out.
Yep.
And it's really, and even though you might say like, oh, how is this skill? Like it's dice roll. These teams are picking that. They're going saying like, I'm hoping these dice rolls turn out right.
And
when
they're
they
picking
could go for a
enough
different
jammers that it gives them the odds in their favor.
the good odds. Good odds. Yeah.
However, they do need to be able to take advantage of that time. Because
Yes.
ECM, unlike the other control, isn't consistent enough to just say, I'm going to damp the team and keep the range the whole match. Because with a good damp team, if you've got enough Hugens to keep yourself at range, they just can't do anything. And so you've actually just controlled the entire match forever. For ECM, eventually it's going to fall apart.
Yeah.
Give it enough time.
All right, I'm going to get the bans for the next match in just a second. I got the first team of them. I'm going to get the second ones. So it's kind of interesting because we talked about the banning system a few years ago, back in the day when I think CCP Claw was the tournament referee and it was Mindstar involved.
You instituted a banning system temporarily.
And
Temporarily.
then took it away.
So,
For
yes,
Alliance
exactly.
Tournament 9 because it was terrible.
So we started talking about it in, I think, Alliance Tournament 8 was the first time we talked about it. And then we threw one out in Alliance Tournament 9, and no one was really happy about it.
No, it wasn't.
And now we finally got it in,
Yes.
and I'm really happy about it.
It's
I think
really good. This one's really
system.
good.
The key difference is that system would have banned players once they arrived on the field.
Yeah.
So that you would have seen what the other guys have and then be like, you go home.
Yeah.
And not only does that kind of reduce the actual interesting options, like this provides more options, well that takes them away, it also really sucks to be that pilot.
Yeah.
I've flown in the tournament and it was like the highlight of my week, just so much anticipation going into it. If you send a guy who's like on his first time in the tournament home, that's not fun for anybody.
Yeah. And there was also the problem where it was just going to be like, oh, your logistics ship is gone. Your logistics ship is gone too. So it just would have been that every match over and over again. Whereas this, it provides so much more depth of play, whereas that just reduced options and reduced play. I really like this setup. I really love it.
I quite like it as well. So the bans for next match looks like it is Rook, Oneros, Tengu, Scimitar. And I might have screwed up the order of who picked what.
I'm just going to assume you said it right the first time.
It's the four bands we have anyway. So no Tengus, no Scimitars, no Rooks, no Oneros.
All very common ships to be banned so far.
Yep.
They're the 2 most popular logistic ships, and then 2 just popular support ships. It's interesting seeing so many Tengus get banned because we haven't seen a lot of actual Tengus showing up. But I think a lot of teams are just afraid of these Tengu teams. With their mobility, versatility, there's a lot of stuff they can do.
I question that though. So the Tango teams are so piloting intensive. Really, very few teams fly them good.
So you're saying that like Tango teams are piloting intensive, and Exile Gaming is coming into this knowing they're against test. So they shouldn't worry.
Yeah, they were like, oh, the least skilled pilots in the entire tournament. What should we ban out? Oh well, they're not going to fly Tangos anyway, so we'll be nice guys.
Well, we're going to find out.
We will have to see.
Yeah.
All right. So, who's going to win? Something else or Exile Gaming?
Going with something else.
I'm going to something else as well because he's always right.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is I don't know Exile Gaming at all.
They do
I
have one of
don't-
my favorite names. It's very much a real esports name.
Exile Gaming, it sounds very serious. And something else, of course, is the Test Alliance team. So I'm going to go with what I know, something else.